In 2019, director James Mangold and star Matt Damon gave the world a paint-by-numbers biopic that ends up being more than the sum of its parts.
Oh, that took a turn. Okay, in 2024, we continue our ride on the BTAC train.
The film is Ford v. Ferrari.
The whiskey is William Larue Weller.
And we'll review them both. This is
the Film and Whiskey Podcast. Welcome to the Film and Whiskey Podcast, where each week we review a classic movie and a glass of whiskey. I'm Bob Book.
I'm Brad G.
And this week we are looking at the 2019? 19?
Question mark?
Is it 19?
Yeah, it's 19.
2019 film, Ford v. Ferrari. Now, Brad, this season, in which we are in episode 4, we are looking at movies from the last 20 years, and we're asking the question, does this film deserve to be considered a modern-day classic? The movies that we've selected for this season fit a number of categories. They had to be either or many of a Best Picture nominee, a $100 million box office grosser in the United States, a Letterboxd Top 250 film, or an IMDb Top 250 film. And Brad, I believe this one checked 3 of the 4 boxes.
Yeah, this made a lot of money.
Yep.
It was nominated for Best Picture?
Yes, it was.
I think.
Yes, it was.
That's a little bit crazy to me. Are we going overboard with our, 10 nominations? Do we need to go back to 5?
Now, I don't mean this in a derogatory way towards, Top Gun Maverick, but, this was in the Top Gun Maverick slot of 2019. There's always, a...
Shots fired.
There's always, a dad movie in the 10 somewhere, and this was definitely in that slot.
Do you think that the Academy, knows that? They're like, well, we got to satisfy the dads out there, so we'll throw them a bone with a nom every once in a while.
Every time Matt Damon makes a movie, man, they're like, we have it. We've done it.
Do you think that this was a pity nomination for Damon? Be like, well, we're not going to give you an actual Oscar, but we'll nominate your movie for Best Picture, I suppose.
I don't know, man. The way that preferential ballot works, to be nominated, a movie has to get at least 5% of the first place votes. So like 5% of people out there rank ordered the movies, and it was in first place. So
that's crazy.
Somebody liked this movie, man. Apparently more than you did.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I've got nothing against this movie, Bob. It's really fun. Things go fast. Vroom, vroom. I just don't know if it is up there as a Best Picture nomination.
So 2019. An absolutely loaded year for film.
Dude, what a great year.
Here's the Best Picture nominees, okay? Ford versus Ferrari, Martin Scorsese's The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, Little Women, Marriage Story, the Best Picture winner, Parasite, 1917, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think after this season, we will have watched every movie except Little Women for the podcast. Yeah.
And Joker should have won it all, Bob. Am I right?
Yeah, sure, Brad. Sure.
I will say, I don't think we've seen The Irishman either.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
So, but we have watched quite a few of these movies. And I have to say, there's a few of them that I'm like, I think Marriage Story has a shot almost any year if it came out. I think Parasite obviously has a shot. Jojo Rabbit's on the edge, but I think it's a great movie. There's a lot of really good films in here.
And one of those movies, Brad, is Ford v. Ferrari. A film that I have already railed against the title of. I hate when they do this stupid thing with the V and not the VS.
Just make it a VS.
It's not a court movie. If it was Ford taking Ferrari to court, that would be a different movie. It's Ford versus Ferrari.
Question, would you enjoy that movie?
If it was like a Few Good Men type movie, absolutely.
Yeah. What's the Blaze of Glory? No, what's Kirk Douglas.
Paths of Glory.
Paths of Glory.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Blaze of Glory, whatever.
I just want Matt Damon to be shouting, like, you can't handle the torque, or like something car related. All right, dude, let's dive into talking about the movie itself. And in order to do that, we have to get into our first segment of the day, which we call Brad Explains.
Brad's gonna give us the movie plot with only 60 seconds ticking on the clock. So let's go ahead and hear your take with this little segment that we call Brad Explains.
Brad Explains is the part of the podcast where Brad breaks down the plot of the film that he has just seen, often for the first time. Brad, was this your first time with Ford versus Ferrari?
Sure was.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So the compulsive need and just being drawn to dad movies has not hit you the way it's hit me now.
No, not even in the slightest.
I see a trailer now that's like cars go vroom, and I'm like, oh, I'm there. I'm totally there.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, you see any movie trailer and go, oh, I'm there.
The trailer, this is coming out a few weeks after we record, but today, the trailer for Clint Eastwood's last film that he's directed,
Ooh.
Juror Number 2, just came, like it just hit the internet today. It looks freaking phenomenal. And my guy, Clint's not in it, but Nicholas Hoult in a courtroom, directed by Clint Eastwood. I am there, front row, like I'm there.
Is Clint Eastwood the oldest man to ever direct a movie at this point?
I don't know. He's got to be getting close. He's at least 114 at this point, right?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, in all actuality, he's 93?
Yeah.
94?
Yeah.
Like that. I mean, I'm sure that there is some 100-year-old man that directed a little home video. But in the world of Hollywood, I feel like he's got to be up there.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, this was your first time with Ford versus Ferrari. we keep straying from the topic at hand today. I hope that doesn't portend to bad things.
Would you say that we're going off the track a little bit?
Off track. So the way Brad Explains works is that Brad gets 60 seconds to spoil this movie. So folks, if you have not seen Ford versus Ferrari, especially if you are a beer drinking dad, I would highly recommend that you go watch this movie and then come back and join us for the rest of the episode. But Brad, you have 60 seconds on the clock and go.
Ford v Ferrari is barely even about Ferrari. It is just, and it's honestly not a ton about Ford either. It is basically the Carroll Shelby and Ken Miles show, both famous race car drivers who build a performance vehicle for the Ford Motor Company, Henry Ford II, in order to beat Ferrari at the race called the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And they win.
Boom.
That's it.
I timed that very well. Brad, I have no idea how that Brad Explains went. I did something that I've never done before, and it just took off my headphones and ran out of the room for a minute.
Oh, good.
Because I want to celebrate this red-blooded American film about cars and guys from Texas or wherever the hell they're from.
You're drinking coffee at 9.
I am not. I am cracking open a tall boy of Budweiser, king of beers right now. You ready?
King of Bob. I'm ready. Bob Book, king of podcasts.
Oh, Budweiser, king of tasting like piss, but we love it anyway. All right, man, let's dive into this movie. Here's the thing. Here's where I want to start with Ford versus Ferrari, because I don't have that much to say about the movie itself. Matt Damon continues to just grow in my estimation every week in terms of his ability to almost silently anchor a movie down that would not work without him in it. And Carroll Shelby is a significantly harder role to play than it appears, because this is a man of few words. It's a guy who shows very little emotion. It's a guy who masks any emotion that he has by feeling the soothing rumble of a car beneath him. And Matt Damon freaking kills it in this movie, dude. It's such a subtle shade of difference from the last time we watched him. And I feel like that's what Damon's good at, is he always is Matt Damon. Like, he has that movie starness to him where you're like, oh, I came to see a Tom Hanks movie and Tom Hanks is being Tom Hanks. Like, Matt Damon has that a little bit, but he's really good at finding 100 different slight variations or shades of the Matt Damon experience. And I think I appreciate that almost more than him going wildly between types of characters.
What was the last movie we saw with him in it?
Oppenheimer.
Oh, like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. How quickly they forget my guy, Matt Damon.
Oh, man. Matt Damon and Oppenheimer, like, pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Not great.
I mean, I think he's better than you think he was. He was the whole comic relief of that movie. And he nailed that one last scene where he had that emotional moment with Oppenheimer.
Sure.
But yeah.
Matt Damon, Ford v Ferrari, great performance.
Primo.
Like, he really holds this movie together because for a movie about going fast, I don't know if director James Mangold really got that memo, because this is a slow movie, Bob.
I never found the movie to be actually slow, but it was definitely fatty. Like, even as I'm watching it, I'm like, these scenes are well put together and well constructed, and I know why they're doing this, but like, I have seen this 100 times. Can we just skip past this part? Do you really have to hit every one of these notes that we know need to get played? Like, let's do something a little bit more original here. I'm with you, man. Like, it's a long movie.
Yeah, 2 hours and like 25 minutes of runtime till the credits. It could have been like an hour and 59 minutes on the dot.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have been very, very happy.
That's part of the reason I want to get the performances out of the way here, because I do think that the meat of the conversation here is like, do I think this is a modern classic? Probably not, but it's still a good movie. But let's put our thinking caps on and try to improve this movie a little bit. I think that would be a fun exercise. But before we get there, you've started hinting at Matt Damon, very good. What did you like about Matt Damon in this movie, especially compared to past performances we've watched of his?
I mean, it's his ability to play everything low key under the surface and let the emotions rise at a few key points in the film.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking specifically of when he takes Henry Ford II on a little test drive and makes him pee his pants, ostensibly. They're like, the way he talks to him in that car is just perfect. Like, he's not speaking down to him, but he's showing him the power of what it's like to experience something versus think about something. And he doesn't speak down to him because he respects the speeds at which this motor vehicle can run. And he wants Henry Ford to respect it as well. And like, it's little moments like that throughout the film that I think he knocks it out of the park because he holds it all in so well throughout most of the film.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. And they do a really good job of trying to give both him and Christian Bale like their Oscar clip scenes. And I think with Matt Damon, there's multiple ones, but the one that really sticks out to me is right around the middle of the movie when Ford has gone to Le Mans and kind of crapped the bed. And they come back and he has to basically explain why he should keep his job. He paints this picture for Henry Ford and says, you have Ferrari exactly where you want him, and he's scared of you. And he explains, you know, we set the track record at Le Mans on that very last lap. And he just starts to like, it's almost poetic the way he starts describing when we're coming down that stretch. And you're like, you're on the edge of your seat listening to him talk about, it's almost like listening to, James Earl Jones talk about baseball in Field of Dreams. When he talks about the way that car flies, it's just, I am completely bought in. And once again, I'll say, Damon has had his Oscar nominations. Like, he was nominated for The Martian. It's a very good movie. It's a very good performance. I truly, truly think, or I guess I should say, I can't think of another actor that is operating at his level of stardom who is consistently as slept on for his performances as Damon is.
I mean, is it because he hasn't had, like, it's been a really long time since he was truly taking command of a film?
I disagree. I mean, even last year, he was the star of that movie Air about the Michael Jordan shoe. That was like being positioned early in the year for Oscar stuff. And then the Oscar voters just weren't interested in it. Like he's still making those kind of movies. He's still in big budget films. He was in Oppenheimer. And we just talked to Bilga a couple weeks ago, and he said, I think really early on, they decided that they wanted to put all the eggs in Robert Downey Jr.'s basket for an award, or else this movie could have been like Godfather 2 and had 3 of the 5 nominees be supporting actors from Oppenheimer. Like, I still think he's making those moves. It's just shocking to me that I guess he has to just like writhe around and do a Revenant or something, because I don't know when else they're going to recognize him.
I'm going to be honest with you, Bob. I don't know if I see Matt Damon as like that level of an actor that like he demands an Oscar because of who he's been over his career. I think he's a really good actor. I don't know if he has quite as much depth and range as what you give him. I think he's too Matt Damon-y in all of his roles.
I just think that he chooses not to call attention to himself, and I find that more admirable than I don't mean to crap on Leo. Leo's one of our favorite actors, but Leo has very few subtle bones in his body in terms of the roles he chooses to play. You know what I mean? Like, even a Shutter Island, which is a very kind of interior performance, is still a big showy performance. And Damon just consistently decides not to take on those roles, or he's willing to be the slimy guy in The Departed so that Leo can be the big lead tortured guy. And I don't know, man. I think that if he ever decided like, I'm going to go for it, I'm going to be big and go eat a bison liver on the open plains.
Sure.
He would be in prime position for an Oscar. I guess what I'm saying is like, I just respect that he hasn't done that. Like, it's almost like he's sticking true to what he believes about the kind of actor he wants to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think you see something similar with Tom Cruise. Like he has the chops to be a Oscar winner. And at this point, he's like, I just want to do cool stunts on actual film.
Yeah, and Cruise's his arc is so different because it's like he was nominated for Oscars. They wouldn't give him one. And then he was like, you know what, screw it. Like, I'm just going to go fly planes now. This is who I want to be. All right, dude. Let's turn the page to Christian Bale, who is an actor that is like, I don't exactly know where he's at in his trajectory of movie stardom or actordom anymore. He was a really respected actor. I think he's still respected. But for a long, long time, it was like, oh, this guy's going to win an Oscar. And then he keeps choosing these roles. Like, he does American Hustle, and he does The Big Short, and he does this movie. And they're all kind of angling for awards recognition. And I don't know exactly why, but it seems like in the Academy's eyes, there's kind of diminishing returns. Like, he just doesn't seem to come up in conversations about the best working actors anymore, which is weird because I really like him. I think he's a very good actor. I do think that this is one of those roles where you probably could have found 3 or 4 different actors to play Ken Miles, because even after watching Bale's take on the guy, I don't really know who Ken Miles is. Like, they do a good job of making him say who he is, and he's obviously a guy who loves his wife and his kid and whatever, but like, there was nothing about the performance itself that I found especially memorable from Bale. And I actually thought there were a few scenes where it seemed like he was acting in a completely different movie than everybody else in the scene.
Yeah, I'm really not with you there.
I told you I had a spicy take, man. I don't think he's bad. I just the decisions he made didn't work for me, and they also were like unmemorable. Sure. I don't know.
I'm going to agree with you for the fact that I think this whole movie is kind of unmemorable. So, like, and is any one part going to stick out to me in an unmemorable movie? Like, not really. I don't think Christian Bale is that bad. I think he does an admirable job with a underscripted character. Like, he's really not given that much to work with. And, the character development at the end of the film of saying, all right, I'm going to take one for the team and give Ford his photograph felt awkward and forced, and like it wasn't actually who he was. So I didn't like that, but that's not on him. That's the writers saying you have to fit what happened in history.
I was going to say, yeah, like he actually did it. So we can't say it's too out of character for him, but yeah.
Well, but I'll say this. The writers never gave any indication that this is the kind of guy who would back down to corporate pressure.
Yeah.
So
I will say that for me, the part of Bale's performance that I loved the best was that scene right there, because it's wordless. He's just a guy in a car and he's pissed off because Shelby has told him what the plan is. Like, you are laps ahead, and now this marketing guy that hates you is trying to screw you over, but we have to do this for the team. And so he goes out and just guns it, and he gets himself another lap record. And as soon as he like basks in the glow of like, I showed them what I can do, you see it kind of set over his face. Like, he's clearly thinking about Shelby in that moment. And like, I'm not going to get my boss fired. I know in my heart that I won this race. I'll slow down. And he does all that without a word. And I actually think that's the best piece of acting from him in the entire movie, whether or not it seems a little cheesy. Like, yeah. I do think Bale really nailed it there.
Look at you complimenting Christian Bale.
I feel like I led this conversation with, I like Christian Bale a lot.
Yeah, but you said it in a way that everybody knew where we were going.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Oh man, yeah, Christian Bale's fine. I'm curious what you think about John Bernthal as Lee Iacocca.
I love me some Bernthal. He's a really good actor. It is really funny because I have no idea. I haven't done enough research on the real story behind this movie because, let's be frank, I don't care. But Lee Iacocca is a guy that people know still as a titan of business. And it is interesting to me that they paint him as like the guy who was in the corner of everybody. Whether or not that's true, that may just be, Ford giving this studio notes and being like, absolutely the hell not. Like, you got to have Iacocca be a good guy.
Yeah.
He is as much of an overwrought good guy as Josh Lucas is an overwrought bad guy.
Ooh.
And I feel bad for Josh Lucas because he is a good actor. And he's so...
Secondhand Lions,
A Beautiful Mind. They so often give him the smarmy asshole role. And I hate that he's not allowed to be anything but a smarmy asshole. Like, there's no added layer there. Whereas with Bernthal, he's at least like a relatable guy who empathizes and is trying his best. I just hated the sort of black and white nature of both of those characters.
Yeah, they are very obviously a yin and yang pairing. And I think what made it even worse is the character of Henry Ford II, where you constantly see him like be bold and foreboding and like, I run this company. And then all of a sudden, like 2 minutes later, suits are making decisions for him and he's invisible. And I don't know. It felt like they jerk him back and forth like a yo-yo. Like, he's in the car with Shelby and he tells him that, he gets it and Ken is going to be his guy. But then, just a few minutes later, it's like, well, yeah, but we're not going to let him actually be Ken. And, he tells Shelby, you're going to be the man storming the beaches of Normandy for me. Like, go to Europe and win it all. And then, actually, I'm going to appoint Leo Beebe as the manager. And it just felt really strange to me. Maybe it's accurate to how things went in real life, but as a movie, there was a lot of stuff kind of on the edges that just felt really weird and contrived and kind of took me out of the enjoyment of what I was watching.
I've obviously never worked as closely to a CEO of such a major organization of Ford Motors, but I've worked with enough high-ranking people in businesses now that I think that I don't want to call it the wishy-washiness, but they do a good job of capturing how CEOs can get laser focused on one thing they care about and be completely oblivious to everything else that's going on in their organization. And I think that they do that really well. Like, he truly, once Ferrari insults him, he's all in on this racing thing to the point where, you know, they show them in a marketing meeting at one point and he's not even paying attention. And as soon as the phone rings, he answers it and he's asking questions about, did we win? Did we win? And I really liked that. And I think that regardless of how weirdly wishy-washy the script makes the character, I actually loved the Tracy Letts performance. I really like Tracy Letts as an actor. He's in so many movies as a character actor. He's a great playwright, and he kind of subsidizes a lot of the stuff he does with acting in movies like this. And I think he does a really good job here, but I'm with you in that the character is like constantly making decisions that I don't understand. But I also kind of know that that's just how C-suite people act a lot of times too.
Sure. I don't know if I've ever seen Tracy Letts in a film before.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I actually just saw him in a movie last night. And then watched him in Ford versus Ferrari too.
What was that movie?
That was the new movie Saturday Night. That's the new Jason Reitman movie about the first premiere of Saturday Night Live.
Oh, yeah. Well, what's Saturday Night Live? I've never heard of it.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Some shitty little show. Brad, before we go to break, anybody else in the cast you want to talk about? Do you want to knock out like talking about Mangold here, or should we wait until the second half for that kind of stuff?
I think we can wait till the second half. I mean, there's nobody to talk about other than, you know, our main two guys. Everybody else is just kind of window dressing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a small cast of supporting actors. I mean, we could talk about Christian Bale's wife and son in the movie. The wife character does not work at all for me. Like, just she's a supportive wife, but she's also like I wear the pants in the family wife, but then she's also like an incredibly submissive wife, and it's this weird kind of confluence of she is whatever this one scene needs her to be that she's in.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the performance by the son is really good. And there's a moment right after they're kind of in the hangar there at Shelby. Christian Bale is test driving one of the cars, and then the brakes go out and the car kind of explodes and they get Christian Bale out of it. But the son is really shaken, and he's talking to the one mechanic guy. And I wish I knew that guy's name because he's that guy that's been in 100 movies too.
Ray McKinnon?
Sure. He's sitting down with him, and he said something about like that guy got stuck in his car because the kid brings up a past driver that got burned alive. And he said, yeah, he got stuck. And then he just kind of leans in and said, like, Dad didn't get stuck, did he? And he said, no, he did not. And it was like the most emotional moment in the movie for me. It was so good.
Yeah.
This movie does such a good job of capturing the weird ways that guys share emotion with each other without actually coming out and saying anything.
Yeah, it's incredible. And then, spoiler alert, he doesn't get out of the car at the end of the film.
Boy, let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
What a weird... look, I understand that reality doesn't always follow conventional movie script beats. Yep. But what a weird tacked on ending. Because it was like, okay, the movie's over now. And then they're like, no. We need to just show a random Tuesday.
Yes.
Where Christian Bale dies. And then cut to a 6 months later tacked on resolution. And then the movie can be over.
So weird. Like, it's so easy to show it like 80s freeze frame with him and like Shelby hugging.
Yep.
And then the vehicle they made, Ken Miles passed away 6 months later in a car crash at a test speedway.
Yep.
The car they created went on to win the next 4 Le Mans.
Right.
And is the only American car to do so. Like, that saves you about 7 minutes right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just never really understood why they felt the need to include that as a scene. Because they don't show, I mean, obviously in good taste, they don't show the aftermath of him dying. Like they kind of fade out and fade back in. And he's just dead.
They didn't pull a George Lucas and show the burnt out corpses.
They didn't show Uncle Owen just freaking wrecked. Yeah. So then it's like, well, then why are we doing this? Like, it's sad, but it would have the same effect. To your point, to just put a little like title card at the end that said he died, because they end that scene by saying like, we'll get him next year, and then the title card could have just been like, they did in fact not get them next year.
Ken Miles did not get them next year.
Yeah, dude. I don't know. I love though the very final interaction between Damon and the son, And I think that's where Damon's performance really shined for me, because it's his turn to have to kind of choke back emotion.
Yeah.
And he just, like, I think his line is something as simple as, like, your dad was my friend. Yeah. And I'm like, he was your friend. Like, I'm to be honest, dude, it got me. And so a movie about dudes being guys. Is it a great movie? I don't think so. But we can talk about that when we get back from break, Brad. It's time for us to drink some whiskey. So what do you say we pull down an $1,100, $1,500 bottle off the shelf and drink some William Larue Weller?
Yeah, I was to say, this is the Ferrari of the bourbon world. So let's get to it, Bob.
All right, folks. Today we are continuing the BTAC bandwagon of 2024 by mooching off of our friend Zach Johnston and his stock of 2023 BTAC. So we're looking at last year's supply to tell you if you should consider going out to buy this year's supply, and we're looking at the other heavy hitter in the lineup after last week's George T. Stagg. We are looking at William Larue Weller. Now, if you've ever heard of Weller, you know that this is the tater bourbon of all tater bourbons. It's Buffalo Trace's wheated bourbon. And what I mean by that is that every single bottle in the Weller vertical, from the $25 special reserve up to the Millennium or whatever they just released, that's like $5,000. There are always lines for it. There's always a secondary market for it. People seem to really love Weller products. So like I said, I think that Weller might actually be the most sought-after bottle in the BTAC lineup, especially when you're folding in the taters that just want the status symbol. It's either Stagg or Weller, but I think this one takes it.
That's interesting to me. I feel like Stagg has the bigger name in what I have heard from friends who are big whiskey enthusiasts. But Bob, I will take your word for it, because at the end of the day, BTAC is BTAC, baby.
Mm-hmm. I do think there's like a hierarchy to it, though. You know, I really liked that Thomas H. Handy Sazerac we tried a couple seasons ago, but I think that if that was the only BTAC bottle I had on my shelf, people would thumb their nose at me for only having Handy and not Weller.
Yeah, no, I was drinking whiskey with a buddy last night, and we were looking at the Highland Park lineup in the Scotch world. They have a whiskey that is a 54-year-old Scotch that will only cost you 39,000 pounds. So, which is about 52,000 USD.
I was going to say, you got to do the conversion rate on that one.
Yeah, $52,000. So yeah, there's people who can look down their noses at me all they want, because I will never be able to afford a car's worth of whiskey.
Like with a lot of the BTAC products, Weller did win a ton of awards in the last year. I'm not going to name them all here because, let's be honest, if you're willing to go out and buy a bottle of year-old BTAC, then nothing I say here about awards is going to sway you one way or the other. This is a 12.5-year, 133.6 proof wheated bourbon. Brad, we are not messing around with the proof points.
No, we're sure not. Last week we were at, what, 135?
I think somewhere in there, yeah.
Yeah, Stagg is in the 130s. This is in the 130s. I know that the other ones do not reach these heights. I'm curious, do you feel like one of the reasons these are the two highest desirability rating of the BTAC, do you think it's just people chasing proof?
I don't know, because like the Sazerac rye, not the Thomas H. Handy, but just the regular Sazerac, is 18 years old in this release. It's usually 17, and it's only 90 proof. They proof it all the way down to 90. So it's not necessarily the oldest one, and it's not necessarily the highest proof one, but this and Stagg are the two highest proofs, followed by Thomas H. Handy this year, and then Eagle Rare, which I think is like 101 proof, and then that Sazerac. Anyway, let's go ahead and drink this one. What are you picking up on the nose of this William Larue Weller?
Bro, this is a cherry pie bomb. Mm-hmm. There is clove. I got really like a really fresh, like right off the stove corn on the cob note with like the salted butter and that fresh corn vibe. The salt came through. The longer I spent with it, the more I got a surprising amount of like a really nice nutty almondy note. I think I'm at like an 8 out of 10 here. It is really nice, really pleasant, but I think I was hoping for a little more complexity off of this.
Yeah, I'm kind of there with you, but I think this throws like an interesting curveball at you. You know, when I was looking up stats on the bottle, I saw a bunch of people's tasting notes, and I tried to avoid them, but I kept seeing the word earthy come up, and I think it's a good description. This is much earthier than Weller usually is. There's definitely a dustier note here, and it does remind me of your cherry pie note, but kind of like if I was holding a sheaf of wheat while eating a cherry pie. It's like, I don't know, it reminds me of, we're from Ohio, so forgive the metaphor, but it reminds me of in the fall when you go do like a corn maze, and all the corn is dead, and you just have the corn stalks that are brown and really dry and dusty. It reminds me a lot of that, and I like it. I think it adds a lot to the general Weller flavor profile, and I think it's going to complement these flavors well. So yeah, I'm actually sitting at a 9 out of 10 on the nose here, Brad.
I'm going to buy you a dried corn style cologne for Christmas this year, Bob.
Please do.
Just
thank you so much.
As manly as you can be. It's like Midwest manly. Like I'm a farmer. All right, Bob. As we get into the palate, I have other notes, but there is a predominant note and then a few like additional tag-alongs. The tag-alongs are like cherry cola, some stone fruit, some cinnamon. There's some really nice things going on here. I don't know if I have ever drank a whiskey, just a plain old straight whiskey, that tasted more like a mixed drink than this one. And I think that this tasted like a Manhattan. It was wild to me how I had that flash, that burst of nostalgia of this tastes like a Manhattan to me. I don't know why. It is a wheat. It doesn't have rye in it, but there was something about it that was like, oh my God, this is a really beautifully crafted Manhattan.
Yeah. I think that it kind of reminds me of yes, there's some sweet vermouth notes, but it reminds me a little bit of some Angostura bitters. And I think that there's a little bit of a maraschino cherry, not a brandied cherry, but it has that sort of bright red candy sweet cherry right at the front end of it for me. And not necessarily the sweetness of it, but definitely that brightness. And you were worried that the nose was a little bit lacking. I would say the taste makes up for that in spades. There is a level of complexity and depth here that we just don't typically get on wheated bourbons. Part of the reason I like wheated bourbon so much is that it's so easy to drink. You just don't have to think about it a lot. Dude, this blows last week's whiskey out of the water. And I think that when you're drinking it, it's really, really hot. More than I was expecting. The flavor went right down the middle of my palate. And then when I swallowed, it was like, hey, what if we set off a bomb that explodes up your tongue again? But even with that, is this is this a 9.5 or a 10 on the taste?
First off, it's a Kentucky bear hug. Forget about the hug. I think it's a 9 out of 10, Bob. This is not as good as the George T. Stagg we drank last week.
I'm going to give it a 10. Just because you said that. It's a 10. 10 out of 10 on taste. Now, on the finish is where I will ding it just a little bit, to your point, Brad. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's really nice. It's long-lasting, it's mouth-watering. I can literally feel the 4-minute radio song with a long fade-out. I can feel it fading off of my palate.
You just have Hey Jude playing.
Yeah, where it's a 1.5 long fade-out. I do think that it leaves a lot of good flavor behind, but it certainly is the weakest part of the whole experience. So I'm going to come down just a little bit. I think I'm going to come to an 8 out of 10 on the finish.
I think the finish is really nice. I'm going to stick at a 9 out of 10 here. I think that there's some cinnamon and black pepper. It gets into the range of stone fruit, almost like a pruny type of finish, but it has enough sweetness that I was trying to categorize. And I realized eventually, I was like, it's just like a really nice marshmallow. There is a nice freshness to the finish. So like I said, 9 out of 10. I think balance, I'm just going to give it an 8.5.
Oh, wow.
I think that there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of complexity once you hit the palate from the nose. It has a lot of really beautiful flavors mixed together, and we can only rate things in comparison to others. I think that George T. Stagg is just sitting on my brain. I don't think this quite measures up.
I feel like I should retroactively go back to last week's score on the finish and give it a 10 if I already didn't. But I think that I'm also being too harsh on this finish, so I'm going to bump it up half a point. I'm going to give it an 8.5 on this week's finish. And I think this is a 9 out of 10 finish. This is about exactly what you could possibly want out of a wheated bourbon finish. The pop of flavor is going to be shorter than what we had last week. The finish overall is going to be shorter. But I think for this category of whiskey, this is like the platonic ideal of finishes. So without any value score folded in, I'm at a 36 out of 40 on just the tasting portion of this.
Yeah, I'm at a 34.5. So not too far off from you. I think that when we get to value, this is an interesting conversation because this falls within the official film and whiskey luxury category. Now, technically, it's $125 MSRP, but you'll never find it for that unless you get lucky and win the lottery.
No, and this is well, this is why I was saying I think this is the most sought after bottle in the BTAC line because last week you were saying, hey, you can find this bottle of Stag for $400 if you're lucky, but you're probably going to be paying $800. And we were like, rah, 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 rah. I just Googled William Larue Weller 2023, and the first 5-6 entries here are $1,800, $1,700, $1,600, $1,700. Like, this is double what the highest ask was for Stag. And because I like it so much, I think that I'm probably going to default to your way of scoring last week, which was just once you're in the luxury category, there is an infinite kind of bell curve up.
Yeah.
Or what's the parabola just goes up forever.
Yeah. It's an iterative game.
Right. Like, if you can find this in a lottery, it is a 48 out of 10 value.
Oh, 100. Yeah. If you can get this for $125 and you don't spend it, I might show up at your house and do unthinkable things to you. Yeah.
Yeah. If you could find this at $500, I'd probably still give it a 10 out of 10. I think this is like one of the best whiskeys I've had in the last year plus. At $1,500, Bob Book will never spend that amount of money on a bottle of whiskey. And if you want it that badly, you go for it. I think last week I just settled at a 5 out of 10. I'm going to go ahead and give this a 7.5 out of 10 on value. I think it is significantly better than last week's whiskey, and I could see why somebody would pay astronomical amounts for this in a way I couldn't last week.
Sure. I think that this is a 5.5 out of 10 value for me, purely within the realm of luxury whiskey. Like, I am considering this in a certain way of thinking the exact same value as last week's whiskey, even though this one might cost you $1,000 more. And at that luxury value of whiskey, I think this is a 5.5. I don't know if it's quite impressive enough for me to say, no matter the cost, this is worth having on your bar.
Well, you're objectively wrong, but besides that, what are you coming out to with your score, Brad?
Bob, even with a 5.5 out of 50, I am at a 40 out of 50 here on the total score.
I'm at a 44 out of 50, which feels low to me because just drinking it, I'm like, oh, this is like a 90 plus whiskey. Yeah. I'm just below that at an 88 out of 100 if you wanted to extrapolate it out. But on average, we're at a 42 out of 50 or an 84 out of 100. Again, when people see the number 84, they think like this is a C plus whiskey. That is not the case.
But Bob, I don't know if you remember how grading works. That is actually a B whiskey.
It depends. Like some teachers would go on a 10-point scale. I had a lot of teachers where a B would go from like 80, it's either 85 or 86 up to like a 92. and then anything above that was an A.
Bob, I don't know what teachers you had in high school, undergrad, and grad school. I never once had a professor or teacher deviate from the 10-point standard.
No, I'm telling you, like, actually pretty much until I got to high school, I was on that like 7-point scale.
Oh.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
Poor you in Akron, Ohio.
That makes so much more sense now, because I'll hear you say something is like a B level, but then you score it way lower than I would expect you to score, and I'm like, that sounds like a C, dude.
Bob, that's because every human in America other than you uses a 10-point scale for their letter grade system.
Yeah, hey, blame the Catholic school that I came up with. They were just harsher.
You know what? Blaming the Catholics is a pretty easy out. So forget the Catholics. Here we are drinking delicious whiskey, which, if we're being honest, Bob, the Catholics love to drink.
Beyond the Catholics loving to drink, I loved this whiskey. Do you recommend this, and in what capacity?
If you are out to buy a bottle of this and you know the price, you know what you're getting into, I would recommend buying this. Like, it is an incredibly unique experience. I have never drank a straight whiskey that tasted 100% like a mixed drink before. So, like, it's a fascinating pour. If you are out to buy a dram of this and you spend $55 on a single pour, like, I think that's worth it. I think it's a good pour that if you know what you're getting into, it's a good time. But at the end of the day, like, you are going to pay a premium for this. And if you're okay with that, then go for it.
All right. Well, there you go. I feel like that was a very diplomatic non-answer in this time of a general election season.
Do you want me to go back to, what was it, season 2 or season 3 that we drank a bunch of BTAC?
I think 3.
All right, so season 3, Brad would go, F Buffalo Trace, they're the worst, they can go kick rocks. W.L. Weller can drown in the river.
That's funny, dude. All right, I recommend, I think if you can find a pour of it, it's probably going to cost you like $60 a pour. This is the best thing I've had in a long time. This is a celebration pour. I mean, similarly to last week's whiskey. It just kind of depends on what your preferred wheelhouse is. This is closer to mine. So I'm going to recommend. Brad is, gunning for a vice president nomination someday.
I'd be a hell of a vice president, man.
You'd be something. All right, dude, let's get back into talking about Ford versus Ferrari. What do you say?
Let's get to it. All right, everybody. That was William Larue Weller from 2023. A whiskey that is really, really expensive.
And damned good.
Very good.
What a freaking whiskey.
Yeah. No, I mean, I would say it is an incredible whiskey, but at what cost, Bob?
We're back to the Oppenheimer question.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the Trinity test of whiskeys. All right, man. It is time for us to get into our second segment, our first game of the day, which we call 2 Facts and a Falsehood.
Brad is gonna try to stump you, Bob. 2 are right and 1 is wrong. 2 facts and a falsehood.
2 Facts and a Falsehood is the part of the show where Brad presents me with 3 items about the making of this movie, all of which are presented as fact, one of which is a complete lie, and I have to guess which one that is. Brad, I am sitting pretty here at 3-0 on the season, and as I said, I did absolutely zero research into this movie, so you could just name 3 car parts and ask me which one is fake. I would not know. I know nothing about cars, dude.
I should have done that. That's a good tip there.
I'm just going to start interjecting random car parts to show how much I know. Alternator.
Exhaust pipe.
Tire.
Door.
All right, man. Hit me with your 2 facts and a falsehood.
Oh, fact number 1. Christian Bale was originally set to play Enzo Ferrari in Michael Mann's Ferrari 2023, but dropped out due to concerns he had regarding getting to the proper weight in time for the role. Mann replaced him with Adam Driver. which feels like at this point in Adam Driver's career, if he's not in every single racing movie as the main driver, like
what are we doing?
What are we even doing in Hollywood? Fact number 2, the claret and blue jersey that Ken Miles' son wears during one of the scenes is a replica of the one worn in the 1960s by the English football team Aston Villa. Fact number 3, attempting to stay as close to a realistic race as possible, director James Mangold insisted that they shoot all the race scenes on site at each of the historic racetracks, with only light CGI additions made in post-production.
That sounds fake. Hollywood doesn't do that anymore. I mean, I like James Mangold as a director. I'm just wondering how much of a leash they gave him. Now, this was pre-pandemic, and it was pre-Mandalorian when they started using that stupid surround sound green screen thing, the volume or whatever it's called. I think 1 is true, so that leaves 2 and 3. I don't know anything about colors and football teams, so I'll say 3 is false. That just jumped out to me as the falsehood. And I'm going to lock that one in, Brad.
Bob, you are absolutely driving your way to success.
Hey, did I get it right?
You did.
4-0?
4-0, baby.
Oh, man. What a freaking streak, Brad.
This might be your longest win streak.
It's pretty bad. That's 4 is the longest. I think a couple seasons ago I did like 7 or 8 in a row. And then then I was resting on my laurels and I took an absolute nosedive after that.
Yeah, you sure did. So don't do that this time, Bob.
I'm going to try my best. All right, dude, let's get back into talking about the movie. And I think what we can do is let's try to situate, why is this movie so beloved? Especially as opposed to other dad movies, race car movies. And then let's try to construct a better version of it, since I think both of us are going to answer no to our big question today of, is this a time capsule movie?
Yeah. No, this is not even close to being a time capsule movie.
Okay, so let's start with the dad movie side of things. Like, what is it about this movie that is making it appeal to so many people? Because this is, I mean, it's IMDb top 250. It made $100 million. It's a Best Picture nominee. I will say, I don't think that it's an incompetently made movie. It's not like a Bohemian Rhapsody that snuck in and I'm like, how the hell did this actually get nominated? It's a well-made film. It just kind of strikes me as like, we've done one James Mangold movie on the podcast before. It was Walk the Line. And I think Mangold, when he's at his best, is allowed to kind of dive into a world and make you feel like the shabbiness of it. You really felt like the down on their luck nature of everybody in Walk the Line. And in this movie, he reminds me much more of, there's a director called John Lee Hancock. He made Saving Mr. Banks. He made this movie called The Founder with Michael Keaton, which is a good movie, but all his movies look so bright and sanitized and like they're made on sets and like the costumes people are wearing are not their real clothes. And this movie feels like that. It feels like the Disney-fied version of what happened. And I just like, I've seen so many good race car movies the last 15 years. Like, why is this the one, man?
I really don't know. Like, this has been on my list for a while to watch. I was excited to see it on for this season. And I think that this movie just really focuses too heavily on two mostly boring characters. And like, you know, they have their moments and they're competently acted. But man, oh man, it takes a really long time to get anywhere. And I think paired with that, I'm going to be honest with you, Bob. I don't love racing movies. They just don't do it for me, man. Like, I think that in filming a race, in filming a car going fast, it's so hard because the only way we actually understand speed in the real world is by standing still and like having something move past us at a rate that is faster than things we normally have move past us. And so most of any racing movie I ever watch, you know, it's very rare to have like standstill shots where the camera doesn't move at all and you just get the cars whipping past. And if you get that, it's like maybe once in the film. And the rest of the movie, it's like cameras hanging off the side, watching the main character's car come up behind another one. And you lose all real sense of speed in almost any racing movie I've ever seen. And I just don't end up being very impressed. The moments of this film that did impress me were when Ken Miles is in the car singing Happy because of like the beauty of the moment and that feeling of relief of like, I did it. I won Le Mans. And like those are the cool moments of the film for me. None of the actual racing really, I don't know, got my red-blooded Americanness like up and boiling.
Let's talk a little bit about Top Gun Maverick. I've mentioned it before. And the thing about Top Gun Maverick is that movie freaking rules. But in addition to that, what I love about this movie and good racing movies that Top Gun Maverick also does is good camera placement on the exterior and interior of a vehicle. And racing movies, when they're well done, are supposed to come at you so quickly, and they do come at you so quickly with the edits, with the cuts, and you're expected to take in so much information so quickly that when they're working, you don't notice the mechanics of how the movie's put together. And I will say that the Le Mans sequence in this movie is a very well done race sequence. And they do a really good job of, especially with the, like in the second Le Mans, Ferrari has that new model that they're racing, and it has the huge like humps with like the nipples on top of it on the wheel wells. And like they mount cameras on that. And so you kind of see a little bit of the tire spinning on the right side of the screen as they're like, you can see everything up ahead of them on the left side of the screen. Great camera angle. Top Gun Maverick does the same thing by mounting cameras both inside the cockpit and then at really strategic places like under the wing of the fighters. I love it when you feel like you're observing a real world thing from an angle that you could never be at. That's really cool to me. And so I think that they actually do that really well. Where Top Gun Maverick, I think, kind of tops this movie is that it does the nuts and bolts shots really well, but it also gives you like really cool payoff shots.
Yes.
Like there are shots in Top Gun Maverick where you're like, how the fuck did they do? Like that is the coolest shot I've ever seen.
Yes.
And in Ford v Ferrari, it may just be a limitation of like guys driving in a circle. You don't really get, even when they do a wide shot, now it's just like, okay, now there's 7 guys driving in a circle. It doesn't have the like immediate, oh crap factor that planes flying do.
Well, and the stakes feel weird because like at the end of the day, racing is a really weird sport. Like, like we've talked about Patrick Willems and how he talks about baseball being the best sports movie. And I still think I'm with him because in racing, it's like, I don't think they do a good enough job establishing the geography of the racetrack. And like, that even includes, like, they spend time with Ken Miles' son drawing the racetrack.
And like,
great.
As he's doing that, you're like, I know why they're trying to explain the layout so that we don't ask questions later. And that scene does not work at all, dude.
But here's what makes it work. Like, as Ken Miles is explaining it to his son, flash to the actual freaking track.
Yes.
Show a plane shot hovering over the stretch and like move along as if you are seeing the race happen. And then the geography has been set. Now you get the payoff of the actual race happening, and I know this track. I've been here before. I haven't just seen it drawn on a taped together cereal cardboard box.
Which is what Top Gun Maverick does. Like, they literally visualize the course that they're going to fly multiple times before you get there. So they once you're in it, they don't have to leave at all to explain anything. And dude, oh man. Hey, guess what? Top Gun Maverick.
Then my boy... Yeah, I was going to say, then my boy Tom Cruise gets in it and does it faster than everyone else, proving that it's possible, Bob.
I'm really glad you brought up Patrick Willems because he literally just made a video about racing movies I don't know, a month ago. Like, and it was a really,
Ooh.
really great video about why racing movies are good. So I would suggest you watch it because I think you're the target audience for convincing that racing movies are good. But I will say before we move off of this part of it, I really liked when towards the end of the film, when he's in that kind of like neck and neck race with the Ferrari driver, and they start showing little insert shots of like they're underneath the pedal, like the brake pedal, and you can kind of see like the hinge on the brake pedal, like angles of the car that a human being could never actually see. I love that kind of stuff in racing movies where there's, you know, a washer that's about to fly off somewhere inside the car and they keep cutting to the shot of the washer, like jiggling. That kind of stuff is always like, yeah, dude, we're inside of a car. I don't even know where this is, but I'm watching it. It's
like when Sebulba walks past Anakin's pod and like breaks a little piece off, and then as he's racing, it's jiggling and about to fall off.
So that was going to be my question. Why is it for you that race car movies don't work, but like a Ben-Hur chariot sequence or a pod racing sequence, is it like specifically the speed of those things? Is like, what is it about those that work better than automobiles?
Sound design. Like, dude, the sound design in Ben-Hur for that chariot race, the thundering of the hooves. Obviously, like Phantom Menace wins the Oscar for best sound design or production or whatever that award is called. And it's because that pod race sounds freaking awesome. Like every single pod has its own distinct thrum and like rumbling, and like the sound design of those two specific examples is off the charts. And if I'm being frank, every single car revving like sounds similar enough. I know they don't sound the same, but they sound similar enough that I'm just not that impressed. And I know that I just made like half of American males angry, but cars aren't that impressive, everybody.
Dude, what a weird role reversal we are in this week. You are being the liberal snowflake.
Yeah.
And I'm over here drinking the king of beers and talking about how cool cars are.
Yeah. And here's the thing, man. I have driven fast cars before. I get it, man. It's really fun to be going 72 miles an hour, barely touch on the gas, and all of a sudden you're at like 87 in a heartbeat. I'm like, yeah, 100% really, really fun.
All right.
At the end of the day, there's a lot of way cooler things in life than cars go vroom.
So, Brad, you are a script doctor. You've been brought in to look at the script for Ford v. Ferrari, which is running too long. The studio has been giving you notes. This is a 150-minute movie. We want it to be like 130 tops. Where are you making cuts and why?
Kill Ken Miles earlier. just knock him off.
That was a real person. You're talking about an actual man. What is wrong with you? Like, his children could very well be listening to this podcast.
If his children are listening to this podcast, Peter, I believe his son's name was, I think your dad is probably a great guy. I think that if I'm fixing this script, I think that I'm almost cutting the character of Leo Beebe. Like, he's not necessary to the movie. Like, you don't need this corporate bad guy in a suit. You can just have orders come down to Shelby. And I don't know. Like, the most important thing he does is get locked in Matt Damon's office. And you don't need any setup for that. He could have showed up just for that one scene, and you could have never seen him the rest of the movie, and I think that would have been totally fine.
I will say that they kept finding ways to make him more dastardly. And, you know, Brad, I work in marketing, so it was kind of funny to me that, like, the bad guy of the movie is like a marketing guy.
Oh, of course.
But there were times where I was like, okay, like, maybe he seems like an a-hole to these guys who are trying to build a car, but he's actually, like, doing a very good job at marketing. Like, choosing to have all three guys cross the line at the same time for a photo op is the most brilliant marketing strategy anyone could think of. not realizing, oh, he actually knew that he knew the rule about the guy running to the car and that Ken Miles would lose, and this was completely vindictive. And I thought that final little twist of the knife was actually really well done. But I'm with you. I wonder sometimes, like, was this Leo Beebe character a compromise as they're like talking to the Ford Corporation as they write the script? And they're like, well, you can't make Henry Ford do bad things. You can't make Lee Iacocca do bad things. So, like, here's this other guy. Here's a sacrificial lamb for you to tarnish his legacy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and I read a little bit about some of the characters. Leo Beebe apparently was actually a really great guy and, like, super down to earth and really chill. So,
they
they
freaking assassinated his character.
Oh, 100%.
That poor guy.
Josh Lucas did him dirty, man.
Okay, so you're cutting Leo Beebe. Do you think that solves the movie's problems? And if not, is it a script thing? Is it a direction thing? Like, would the more gritty version of this movie work better? Or is it just kind of, I don't know, my theory on the movie working as well as it does, or the reason it's so endearing is that it really does appeal to this is America. We have ingenuity. We will do what it takes. Also, weren't the 60s incredible? Look how clean everything was. Cars were great back then. Like, it's just a nostalgia trip, dude.
Yeah, 100%. And at the end of the day, man, America was great. We won 4 years in a row, and we haven't won again, and who cares? But
you're gonna say we won 4 wars in a row. It's like, oh damn, okay.
The rest of the world can suck it. Oh man, no, we win Le Mans 4 years in a row, and we establish dominance, and then we're like, okay, peace out, we're done.
I also like how that's where the story ends. It's not like eventually we lost. It's like we were too good for this race.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, man.
Dude, I'm going to be honest with you. I think that this movie is about as good as it can be. Unless you are getting a vastly different director who really takes it stylistically a different direction, there's not a single shot in this movie that makes me go, oh, James Mangold. Yeah, look at you devil. Look at what you did to this movie. It's incredible. There's not a single moment of this movie that makes me really excited about what's happening on screen.
Brad, I think that's a perfect segue into our final segment of the day, which we call Let's Make It a Double, presented by Blackwood Distilling Co.
We're near the end of the episode, so thanks for listening to the Film and Whiskey Show. Let's pair another film with this one, even if it's a struggle. It's our final segment of the day, now let's make it a double.
Let's Make It a Double is the part of the show where we pick a movie to pair up with this one to make the perfect double feature. Brad, I've been thinking about movies that I could pair this with. It's funny we brought up Michael Mann's Ferrari a little bit ago, a movie I loved, because I feel like the overriding theme of this movie is guys who can't emote and use their work to cover up their emotional shortcomings, which is very Michael Mann. This is Heat, but it's like sanitized Heat. So I'm actually going to pivot. My Let's Make It a Double is another racing movie, and it's a movie that I really want you to go watch now because I think, based on what you said about this movie, that you'll really like this movie. It's a movie from 2013, also in the IMDb Top 250. It's called Rush. It's a movie directed by Ron Howard. It stars Chris Hemsworth and Daniel Bruhl in a true story about rival F1 racers. And it is significantly more kind of down to earth and gritty and grounded. It's an R-rated movie, so they get a little bit more adult with the themes. It's 2 hours and 3 minutes, not 2 hours and 30 minutes. And I just think, having watched them both now, I was really kind of wondering if I should have put Rush on the list. And now that I've watched Ford v Ferrari, Rush is the better movie to me. And I think you'd really like that one, Brad. So I'm going to pick Rush.
Yeah, I will definitely not watch that movie. For me, I think that I'm going to pair this with a movie we have watched on the podcast before. And it's a movie that I remember absolutely nothing about. And I think that I will be in the same place with Ford v Ferrari like 3 or 4 years from now. I'm going to pair this with Straight Outta Compton.
Wait, so what was the reasoning there?
It's a biopic that I don't remember anything about.
I will say from week to week, you forget most of the things about most of the movies we watch. So you really could have paired this with any movie we've talked about.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oppenheimer. What even happened?
Do you really think that like you will never go watch Rush in spite of the fact that like you have a recommendation from me, the guy who knows your movie taste better than anyone else, telling you that I think you will like it?
Yeah, I watch a movie a week for this podcast, Bob.
I mean, I'm not saying watch it today. I just think like if you ever get around to if it pops up on Netflix, like I think it would be worth a watch. Sound design is great.
I do love me some good sound design. I think the problem would be that it has not imprinted in my brain enough for me to like see it pop up on Netflix and go, oh, that's the movie Bob said I should watch. I've never heard of that movie. I didn't know it existed until 10 seconds ago. And I have my own list of films that I like want to watch that I haven't seen yet. I have movies that I want to watch again from the podcast. Like I was just thinking about The Secret Life of Walter Mitty today. And I was like, man, I really want to go back and watch that movie. So like, I don't know, man, there's a lot on the docket. I will throw it on the pile gladly. It's like in Akiru when they just keep taking problems that the city is facing and just keep adding it to their pile of papers.
I hate that this is the situation that this movie is in for you, but I love that you explained it by making it an Akiru reference. So
yeah, you got it, man.
It's like in Akiru. You are such a snob now. I love it so much, man. All right, Let's Make It a Double was brought to you by Blackwood Distilling Company, Kentucky's premier distillery, offering toasted barrel bourbon and rye. No matter what movie you're picking, you can always make it a double with Blackwood Distilling Co.
It's because Blackwood's freaking delicious,
it's
man.
So good, dude. Brad, let's go ahead and give this movie some final scores. I think I'm higher on this movie than you are, and I'm in a very similar place to The Help. Like, it is a movie that I can see why it doesn't work for a lot of people. It's cheesy. It's sanitized. I think that once you get to Le Mans, the final, 40 minutes of this movie are just really great filmmaking. So I've been vacillating between a 7.5 and an 8. I think I'll give it a 7.5 out of 10.
I think I'm going to sit at a 7, Bob.
Okay.
It's a well-made film. There's some good acting. Honestly, I might be a little lower if not for the scene of Matt Damon driving Tracy Letts in the race car. Because I don't know if I've ever seen a more efficient expression of the idea that experience will trump knowledge any day of the week. So well done. And it's such a beautiful imagery of a very important life lesson that I'm like, okay, I can get down with that, but I can also just go Google that scene and show it to people and not make them watch a 2.5 hour movie.
This is like the epitome of a YouTube Shorts movie too, because the acting is slightly cheesy. Everyone has their little lines that they say, and then everyone in the comments goes, "Oh, what great life advice!" Like this is one of those movies for sure. Brad, I'm gonna throw you a curveball here. Next week is our Halloween episode. Like it's coming out 2 days before Halloween, which is complete coincidence. Our movie for the week is the film Whiplash. A movie that I love, and that I remember when I saw it in 2014, my review of it said, like, this is the most terrifying movie I've seen all year.
Yeah. I was going to say, it is an emotionally horrifying film.
We also have a couple movies on the docket that would be kind of appropriate. So the following week is Bong Joon-ho's Parasite, a film that has weird, creepy elements to it. And there's also a few weeks after that, David Fincher's movie Zodiac.
Ooh.
Do you want to keep Whiplash where it's at, or should we bump something else up into the Halloween slot?
I think that's up to you, Bob. I have seen Whiplash and Parasite. I have not seen Zodiac. So if you want me to watch a new horrifying film for the Hallows Eve, then I'm in, man.
I'm okay with waiting on Whiplash or on Zodiac. I just worry that, like, I'm counting the weeks now, and I'm like, is this going to come out, like, at Thanksgiving time? Like, are we going to be like, I am so thankful for this horrific series of serial murders?
Actually, yes, it comes out 2 days before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, let's
don't
do
worry,
it.
Bob. We have Thanksgiving to make everybody feel better.
That's funny, man. All right, dude. We're going to do Whiplash next week. So to close out this week, we are at a 7.25 out of 10 on Ford v. Ferrari, but we'd like to know what you think. Did we miss the boat on this dad movie classic? You can let us know on any of our social media accounts, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube at Film Whiskey.
Or you can join the conversation on Discord. We are on there every single day talking to you guys, fans of the Film and Whiskey podcast. So if you'd like to join the conversation, you can find a link at the end of every single one of our show notes.
Next week, it's Damien Chazelle's 2014 freaking masterpiece, Whiplash.
Magnum opus.
So we'll see you next week for that one. But until then, I'm Bob Book.
I'm Brad G.
And we'll see you next time.